two guys want to introduce yourselves as well.
Sure. Yeah. Dr. Joey Gawrysiak, Director of Esports, as well as a Professor of Esports here at Shenandoah University.
And I'm Nicolas Besombes, and I'm an Associate Professor in the Sports Faculty of the University of Paris.
All right. So a few months ago, this tweet was put out by Staffordshire University, and it said, soon working in esports will require a university degree. So we don't know exactly who posted that, somebody maybe in marketing or within the university. And then you can see what we've screenshot here from Decay. The F it will. I will battle until death against people who claim this BS. GTFO. I'm not sure what that means. And then you can see the number of likes, retweets. So this got some controversy behind it. Obviously, Staffordshire has an esports program. And then about 2 days later, a prominent journalist in the esports industry, Adam Fitch, reached out to a Staffordshire University student and interviewed this student about what is an esports degree, what are the courses you're taking, who are the professors in this, what types of industry connections are related within the program. And so there seemed to be, just based upon this little evidence here, a lot of confusion within the industry of what is an esports degree, is it valuable, what are the courses in it, what are the focus areas. And so for the past 2 years, we've been looking at and trying to collect what are the different programs across the world that offer esports degree programs. So in 2018 is when the really spike in the increase in popularity of these programs occurred. Becker College in the US was the first to have an esports degree program for that country. In the UK it was Staffordshire, and then Finland was Kajani, University of Applied Sciences. However, what's less known is there have been esports degree programs back as far as 2004. This program no longer exists, but Danube University, Krems in Austria, 2007, a program in South Korea, and then 2016, which is more of a technical one-year program in Finland. And so there have been esports programs that have originated way before 2018 when this popularity has increased. And so as we said, a lot of people tend to not know what's the value of an esports degree program and what is part of these programs, what's the curriculum. And so that's what we are really going to try to present today.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. And to get us started with this, before we actually talk about the degree awarding programs that we've found around the world, it's important to recognize that there are some non-degree awarding entities that also provide an esports education, and most of these are for some kind of certification. Some are very short-term, some are long-term, some are kind of free, at least at the beginning. Some have just kind of the certification part or the test that you pay for. So we found a number of different ones, and this is not an exhaustive list, kind of like what we find in this presentation. There are so many things that are so fluid with esports education and programs popping up that we've done everything we can to be as exhaustive as possible. Surely we've missed something somewhere in there, but these are the ones that we've found as examples of the non-degree awarding entities. NACAD, the National Association of Esports Coaches and Directors, has a certification program that is absolutely fantastic. The Skillshot Academy, launching a brand new program, especially on the coaching side of things. Blazefire Games has also an extensive management-based esports program online. And then the Varsity Esports Foundation, they have some modules that are, I think there's 3 or 4 of them that are free, and then you pay to take the certification, and then you get the certification.
So firstly, actually, we focused on the geographical diffusion of these degree programs. So we started with actually Europe, because it's, as Seth said, it was where the first program actually just emerged. So as you can see, most of this program is distributed in the Western Europe and in the Scandinavia, mostly in France, UK, or Germany, Spain, and Finland. As you can see, it's quite well balanced. The distribution is well balanced between undergraduate programs, which are in green, and graduate programs, which are actually in blue. So this is for Europe. For actually the Southeast Asia, as Seth said, the first one was in 2007 in Chanam Techno University in South Korea. And after that, you have some two other programs that we found in China. To be honest, there is a limitation in our research, is the fact that it's quite really difficult to find relevant sources regarding Asia. And we will come back to that a little bit later. And then for the North America, as you will see, actually, it's quite impressive how most and the majority of this degree program are centralized in the northeast coast of North America, should they be in US or in Canada, actually. And it's mostly for undergraduate programs, and there are a few actually graduate programs. If we focus actually on the certificate programs, we just put that in a worldwide map because, as you will see, most of these programs are spread in two main regions, Europe and North America. But we can notice that in South America, you have Argentina and the city of Buenos Aires, which is hosting a new esports certificate program since 2018. And lastly, if we focus actually on the undergraduate esports minor programs, they are all focused in North America and actually the United States. So what is quite interesting regarding these few slides actually is the fact that the geographical diffusion of the educational programs of esports are directly, I think, linked to the three main esports regions in the world. EU, of course, Southeast Asia, and North America.
All right, so before we get into breaking down kind of where all these come from, it's important to talk about what is the general purpose of an esports education. And there's not really one single purpose. There could be a lot of different purposes for having an esports education. This is just a few of the things that we thought an esports education should provide. And also we found that a lot of the programs that we found backed up these ideas. Preparing the next generation to work in the esports industry, obviously very important because it's beyond the point where we just have gamers that work in the esports industry. It is a business, $1 billion industry that needs people that have an education in this to really help take it to that next level. Facilitating new employment opportunities, very entrepreneurial in nature. It does provide a lens of learning, and it teaches concepts kind of across different disciplines because esports can be extremely interdisciplinary. And so you can really rely on a lot of different areas to teach through the lens of esports, but teach them concepts that really go across different industries. And also, like other education is moving a lot these days, it's rooted in very practical experiential education and learning opportunities. So we found that over and over, a lot of schools find it's important to give students not just the classroom learning, but the hands-on learning to go with that classroom learning. And that's true, again, across different disciplines and different areas of study because they want people with that real-world knowledge.
So today we're going to provide that analysis of the esports degree programs in higher ed. We've presented some of those programs already, but then we're going to sort of analyze and look at some trends across the curriculum for these programs. We're going to look at what are the focus areas of these programs, what are the objectives of the programs. We're also going to look at and try to quantify, I guess you could say, the quality of the programs through looking at the number of esports specific courses offered within the programs. And then we'll look at it through the theoretical underpinning of diffusion theory, and then finally provide some similarities and differences across the programs. So here's our methodology of how we did this research. Again, back in 2018, with Shenandoah University, Joey and I helped write some of that first curriculum there. And since then, we've been compiling a list of esports programs. And so we've looked at, different programs spell it differently. There is some of them that use the E outside of the US and the lowercase e as well. But those are some of the search terms that we use as esport and degree, certificate, minor, course, or module. We used program websites, so the institution's website. We use news articles and personal correspondence to find these programs. We were limited to English language, and so we used Google Scholar to help out a little bit, but that's some of the limitations to finding more Asian programs because of the language barrier. We did not include computer game design programs. They really needed to have esports in the title. And we did a comparative content analysis following ELO and Kagus there when we were looking at some of the trends across the curriculum.
So to break down some of these different percentages, I mean, and obviously there's a lot of numbers up here. And so you can see kind of where the emphasis lies when you talk about the kinds of degrees that exist for esports at institutions of higher education. We found a total of 72 programs worldwide that we were able to glean this information from. And you can see that the majority of these degrees, the highest percentage, goes to the bachelor's degrees. That's where we find the most esports programs in a higher education, our degree, our bachelor's programs. The second most being the other category, which, you know, is kind of a catch-all for certificates, minors. We have some varying degrees of these classes, this kind of certificate, this kind of, you know, area of study that's not really a diploma, not really a bachelor's degree, but more than a certificate. So we found a lot of variance within those. We do see some master's degrees, and then the tech and diploma, just the diploma side of things, has the lowest percentage as of right now worldwide. On the right-hand side, you see the breakdown for where the type of degree that it is and where the emphasis is for the area of study, and most of that being in the management and business side of things. That's where the vast majority of these degrees are really on that management and business side. Media and communication, obviously with content creation, broadcast production, we're seeing a lot more of those programs pop up in these kind of degree programs. And then from there, you see it kind of tapers off. The production, the design, kind of the esports design side of things, not so much game design, because we weren't looking as much at game design as we were esports in particular. So that didn't really count within this. The performance, the coaching, I see those as areas that are going to really increase going forward in the future, especially on that performance side, talking about nutrition, fitness, wellness, and how it impacts gaming. And then the rest, again, we're a catch-all with the bottom 8%. So again, the vast majority on the management and business side.
So here's another way to display the information. You can see the most programs are bachelor's degrees, master's degrees. Obviously, as we said, this is all the information that we found through our searching, but there may be more programs that exist than what we've found here. Now, if we look at bachelor's degrees specifically, out of the 29, 14 of them focused on esports management, then 12 of them focused on business management. So what this is where do these programs, these bachelor's degrees, what's the focus area of the program? Now, here's the master's degree programs and their focus areas, management being the largest area, media the next, and then it sort of tapers off. Here's the undergraduate certificates, massively, heavily leaning toward management. That we have one game design, coaching, performance, information technology. Technical 1 year. So in the US, we'd call these associate's degrees. These types of 1 to 2 year diplomas. Several of these are in Canada, actually. And so the 2 of them performance, 2 entrepreneurship, 2 business. Graduate certificates. I'm continuing to see more and more. I just saw one, somebody shot me an email today of Eastern Tennessee State University that I didn't know about. That was an esports management one. So you can change that 4 to a 5. Graduate certificates. One of the things we'll mention later is the majority of the graduate certificates tend to be online programs, while the rest of them tend to be face-to-face. And then undergraduate minors, management communication are the 2 focus areas that we found. And then 1 year international certificates that tend to be less higher ed institutions, but in more specialized schools that offer these programs.
And then what we did is after looking through what was out there, we also went into what were the objectives and goals stated by these programs, especially listed on their websites as best that we could. Again, we searched like crazy trying to find as much information as we could about what was the goal, what were the objectives of these different programs. And we looked for some commonalities and then, of course, some differences. Some of the commonalities that we find, a number of these were very global and international in nature, which totally makes sense. I mean, esports is a very global industry, and so they're teaching international competencies. And that was a very big thing that we found across a number of programs. Very broad on the business and management concepts related to esports is another commonality across a lot of programs. Very practical. I mentioned that earlier, that these programs are experiential in nature, where students are getting the experience outside the classroom. So they're very practical, using guest speakers, using real world projects to get that experiential learning while they're also kind of doing it in the classrooms. And so we found that this is a very broad category where we found a lot of the experiential learning through a lot of different methods to get that experience. And then event management. That was a very common one that a number of programs wanted to teach students how to run an esports event from the very beginning to the very end. And everything in between. And so the very broad event management and business management, very common across a number of these programs for their stated goals and objectives. Some of the differences we found was how they got the experiential learning. Some were big onto guest speakers and bringing those in from the industry. Some were big on internships. Some were big on just experiences outside the classroom, kind of like independent studies, like we would call them here in the States, where students could get these experiences by doing stuff outside the classroom and outside of kind of quote unquote normal or lecture classes. But even within those classes, the way that they had projects was very different looking. And so even though they're all experiences, they're very different types of experiences. As Seth mentioned earlier, the spelling of esports, we found everything that you could think of for the spelling of esports, and it's still used almost interchangeably around the world. We still don't have really this one universal unifying way of spelling esports. So we did find a number of differences there. The pro gamer training, we found some programs that were not so much teaching about how to work in the industry, the business side or the management side or the coaching side, but more the playing side, actually getting better in training to get better at playing esports and competing at the highest level. And then very, very few actually were engaging in research training. I think there were one, maybe two schools that actually said they wanted to train the next generation of esports researchers as part of their objectives and goals.
So as I mentioned before, one of the programs that we saw, it's a graduate certificate program. It's an institution that is not well known for esports. They have a Master's of Science in Sport Management, and they have an 18 credit graduate certificate program. And when you look at the esports management certificate program that they offer one esports course. It's called Intro to Esports. And then they just took a bunch of courses from their sport management master's degree. And then now all of a sudden you've got an esports graduate certificate. And so we said, you know what, let's analyze how many courses that they offer that actually has esports in the title. And so this is a breakdown of the programs that actually listed the courses that are in the program. So that's why the numbers don't match up, where you can see there's 22 bachelor's degree programs. Well, 7 of them didn't list their entire curriculum on their website. But of the 22, the average esports specific courses was just under 8. But what's really interesting too is the range of esports specific courses. So you could get a bachelor's degree in esports and only take 3 esports courses from some of these institutions. So makes you think about some of these programs being offered and the quality of the programs. So here's another breakdown of the esports course focus areas. So the first row here is the number of programs that offer an introduction to esports course that also maybe cover history and might cover culture. The 17 across all the US and Canadian programs, The 22 is the number of courses that are international. And then the total number of esports courses across all the programs was 39 that included an intro to esports course. If you see the total number of courses that we analyzed, it was 306 at the very top. So this is in order of the most common courses across all of these programs, where Intro to Esports is number 1, Intro to Esports Management or Esports Business is number 2. As Joey even mentioned, the number event management for esports is the third one. Esports ethics and law. So you can see it from top to down. Some of the things I want to call your attention to internationally, actually the number of performance and health courses was significantly lower than US. The US tended to do a little bit more consumerism, and internationally they tended to have more journalism and media types of courses. So as I mentioned, we were looking at this through the theoretical lens of diffusion theory. And what is an innovation? So we're looking at as offering an esports degree as an innovation. It's a new idea. It's a new product. It's a new process. It's a new way to teach students through the lens of esports. I'm not going to get into the constructs, but you can look up Rogers 2003. But if we look at these main I'm sure many of you have seen this adoption curve where it is how quickly somebody will adopt something new, a new innovation. And the innovators they take chances, they have financial resources, they can cover losses, and they're first at it. And we're going to look at some of the institutions that are what we might call innovators. Characteristics of early adopters are they're well-respected role models, they embrace change. And then here's the issue where we are right now is a lot of these programs, as we said, it really started to spike in 2018. Well, for a 4-year degree, these people have not graduated yet, so we don't have evidence to know whether these people are going to get jobs or not in the esports industry. So we're really not at the early majority yet because these people don't see the evidence of whether it's worth it to try to offer this type of program.
Right, and we can look here about kind of where we think we are as far as the adoption curve goes relative to the esports degree programs. Those innovators that Seth had talked about, Seth and Nico had talked about earlier, those were before fall of 2018 when we really hit that spike in a lot of these programs starting up. So the early adopter phase actually started in the fall of 2018, and we're still in it. You can see that we kind of hypothesize and think that we will see kind of the end of that in the spring of 2024 as we're starting to get that evidence that Seth was talking about. And you can see here, again, the number of programs, the innovators started 2004, and then we got the early adopters. And as we start to add more programs in, we're going to continue along the path to the next phase as well.
It's you again, Joey, isn't it?
That was you. I'm differences.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So some of the similarities across all these programs. I mentioned this. The majority of these programs are actually face-to-face. The ones that are certificate programs tend to be online. As Joey mentioned, the majority of these programs focus on, they're either called esports management or esports business, and the courses reflect that. The majority of them offer an experiential internship, you might call them practicums, and they also tend to include hosting an esports tournament within their program. And a lot of especially the US programs will list an esports advisory board for the program on their website, and those are typically industry professionals.
And then quickly, some differences in these programs. Where it's housed is very, very different around the world, whether it's in communication, business, under sport management, game design, marketing, engineering, and so on and so forth. So where it's housed is very, very different and really kind of tailors what the focus and aim of that degree program is. There's a lack of esports degrees in that performance and coaching, but like I mentioned earlier, I see that as a large area that's going to grow going forward. I really think that performance, that nutrition, fitness, the wellness, I see that as a huge area of growth and an area of study that we're going to see in the next 2 to 5 years. The for-profit institutions, the private institutions versus the public institutions around the world, they just are very, very different kind of specifications, and some are too broad. They don't specialize enough. They just say, hey, here's a degree in esports, and they're not really training them for any specific part of esports. It's almost like you're just gaining knowledge about the esports industry. And then the last part, in the US, bachelor's and master's degree are much bigger, whereas in Europe, those one-year certificates and diplomas are much more popular. So we see a difference internationally there.
So actually, to conclude, as you can see, our objective with this study was to provide an analysis of the current existing esports education programs, and mostly focusing on the esports degree programs. So on the perspective and the future direction, I will just focus on three main directions. The idea is, as Seth told us in the introduction, it's how to make these esports education programs be accepted by the industry. So how to make these programs relevant and how to create links with the industry to be sure that the students that we are actually training now could be really relevant as human resources for the industry in the future. What we have seen also is the fact that there is a need for more academic research that to be involved in this esports program, and as Joey just said before, is the fact to move beyond only the management programs to research, science, and specifically performance and coaching, as you have seen, that are really not very popular right now. And lastly, I just want to focus on the last bullet point, is the fact that there is a need for the education institution to partner with the esports industry for all this esports degree program. I mean, by the industry and the different stakeholders, it could be organizers, platform, teams, of course, because we think that the acceptance of this esports education program should just go through this kind of partnering with the esports industry and esports stakeholders.
References. We didn't make it all up. And contact information. So we thank you for attending. I'm not sure who all is listening in, but we welcome any questions if we have time.
Yeah, there's a request from Rob Bolton saying, can you please link the esports coaching programs you just mentioned? So
yeah.
we could...
Well, I sent him a message, and we could link those. I think it's easier to just email one of us to get that information. It will be easier through that instead of trying to find it right now and put it in here. So yeah, Rob, please feel free to email me or Seth or Nico, and we can get you that information for sure.
I think we have time for a couple of questions. If you all have any question. So April Welch says, do you find the game design programs are being marketed as part of esports?
I don't. They typically, what I've seen is they usually have the term gaming in the title, and they don't just necessarily, most of them don't use the term esports for the game design programs. They usually are called video game design or gaming design programs from what I've seen.
Yeah, same way. I've seen those as two very different things. That's why when you saw in here, we tried to mention that we looked at programs that said esports specifically instead of just gaming or any kind of game design. And that's why there were so few that we found around esports, like one or two that even had anything to do with game design and esports. But yes, typically, as Seth said, very, very differently listed.
And we have another question. Do you have any personal thoughts on what sorts of topics an esports degree program should ideally cover now that you have seen what it actually is being offered?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, ideally, from what we've been offering here and what we've seen out there, I mean, management is a big one. Depends on the focus of your university, you know, and I tell people all the time, do what makes sense at your university, what fits the mission of your school. Making it very practical, very real. I think event management is a great thing to offer no matter what the program is or what the goal is, because you can learn so many different components of esports through event management, from the marketing side to the programming side to the casting side to the content creation, advertising. I mean, there are so many components to esports you can learn by having a class run an esports event and all parts of it. That to me is got to be the most universal course, is an event management class.
I would add on to that. I think, as Joey said, you play to your strengths, but also what types of jobs are available, and does your program funnel these graduates to specific esports jobs or not? And that's pretty important because you want people going into higher ed to get on a career path.
Yeah, I will just add that in France, what we have seen actually is the fact that most of the first programs that have emerged in France, they didn't, the program, they didn't know to what job they are training actually. So it was, as Joey said, it was very, very broad actually. It was just esports program, and all the students, they were doing a lot of stuff in 1 year. And what we have seen is the fact that actually there was no, I can say, benchmark that has been done by these programs just to identify what are the jobs that are needed actually for the industry in France. So I think that the first step is really to know the ecosystem and the local ecosystem firstly, and of course to create international bridges, just to give the opportunity for the students to be actually included in this industry just after their training courses actually.
Great. So we're actually going to go to a break now, but before going, I just wanted to ask, there are a couple of more questions in the chat, so just to put them out there to like start a conversation. There's one about opinions on the quality of esports degree programs, especially with esports changing so often. So what do you think about that? And what programs, universities are classified as early innovators in the US? So if you could answer it in a minute or two.
Yep, I'll try real quick. I was going to type something. It's hard to keep up for sure. There's no question about it. So the changing space, faculty qualifications is such an important part of any kind of degree program. Making sure you have faculty that are qualified to teach in this. As far as the programs that are early innovators, Becker College, UC Irvine, Harrisburg University, Shenandoah, Caldwell, Northwood. Some of those are New Haven. All those are kind of the earliest ones, but we're seeing more and more pop up all the time.
And I'll add on to that too. We're planning on putting this into a peer-reviewed publication, and we hope to include the entire list with more detailed information on every program out of the 70 plus programs in the works.
So thank you so much all for attending this session, and thank you, Dr. Jenny, Dr. Gawrysiak, and Dr. Besombes. This has been a wonderful session. Please feel free to join us in Discord for a break, and don't hesitate to reach out to the authors if you have any more questions. I'm sure they would be happy to answer.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to you, Maria. Thanks to the attendance.